everybody, welcome back to 4 Down Territory with my co-host AJ Lawrence. I'm Bobby DeMuro, back another week bringing you 4 hot topics and hopefully 4 hot debates in the world of sports. We're going to get going right now because the Super Bowl just happened, and while everybody else dissected how disappointing of a game it was, especially if you're a Broncos fan like me, we're going to talk about maybe the bigger picture with it, and that, on first down, is Peyton Manning's legacy.
Absolutely. Something to be discussed. He's a great quarterback, but we saw that performance. It wasn't pretty.
It wasn't pretty for the team. For him personally, we were saying set the all-time Super Bowl record for completions in a game. The problem was they only got 1 touchdown. You need to score more than that.
Absolutely.
But let's ask the question now, AJ. I'm interested in your opinion because Peyton Manning has said he will come back next year for the Broncos, and I think he will and may play 1 or possibly 2 more years, but his career is definitely almost over. So where does he fit in? Top 3, top 5, top 10 in greatest quarterbacks ever. Where is he in the discussion for you?
For me, I would say Peyton definitely in the top 10, maybe around 5. You know, he's an excellent quarterback, and everyone points out, as we got to see, regular season, fantastic. Playoffs, not so strong. He has, an 11-12 record now? But, you know, on the day-to-day, his performance, as we saw when he came off the surgery and he took to the field, and he really killed the 2013 season. It was really, really nice. And by really killed, you mean set every NFL offensive record there was to set. So literally killed the record book and the season itself. I think when you look at Peyton, and I agree with you, he's not top 3. I'd put him maybe top 7, 8, 10. And we could really rack our brains and go through and talk about every quarterback. But I think that one thing you need to think about with Peyton Manning is offensive schemes today in 2013, 2014 are more complicated than they've ever been before, and they're only getting more complicated every year, and you've got guys like Jamarcus Russell, who may be a bad example, but there's a lot of guys like him who cannot hack it mentally in the pros and who fail. Ryan Leaf, Vince Young, there's a lot of these guys. Peyton Manning, he is the director and the leader and just picks and pops and picks and pops, and 8-yard passes, you know what he's going to do every time, and he's still successful. It's something to be said to be the technical mastery, the technical expert in such a technical era of the league. Absolutely, I agree. You know, he is the mind. He was born, bred, and raised, Archie Manning's boy. Yeah. He's out there. He's an exceptional quarterback. My only concern is, as we saw in the last game, if he is just so sharp and on it, he should have been able to note that Seattle was on top of the plays before he even executed them. And so it's a question of his true sharpness and how comprehensive it is. Like, sure, you might be able to dictate how the play is going to go, but at the end of the day, can you also really defend yourself against the other team when they are actually coming your way with knowledge that you have?
I only wonder, though, and that's a valid point about Seattle and what the Seahawks did to them. I only wonder, John Elway, another great Broncos quarterback, upon retirement, won Super Bowls in his last 2 seasons, retired on top, and nowadays when you talk to people about John Elway, oh, he's one of the greatest ever, top 3, top 5, top 10, John Elway for sure, he was a winner. Well, he lost a few Super Bowls before he won those last 2. So are we putting too much value on one game? I know it's the Super Bowl, I know it's important, but is it too much value on one game? Because if Peyton would have won it, would we have called him the greatest ever? I mean, seriously, is it too much value on that Super Bowl?
No, I think it's valuable and important because, like we know, winning is most important. But also, this is a game that they play for. This is what matters, that last day, that last game in the Super Bowl. And so if you cannot tough it out and really perform at that date and time, then it's kind of like, what was the entire season for? Although, like you noted, he did set a lot of records. It was really, really good. But at the same time, if you can't execute at the end, what's the point?
No, you're right, but you're also wrong. The other thing that I think about Peyton Manning that we need to take into account, and we agree on this part, the neck injury was so serious. He's not the most athletic guy and was never the most athletic guy to begin with.
No.
You've got an era right now with Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton, of quarterbacks who have great arms and are also great runners. Peyton Manning is not going to run the ball anywhere. I'm not sure he could run more than about 6 yards if you had him do it. He's going to drive his Buick. Is he a Buick sponsored?
I don't know.
Whatever his sponsorship is, he's going to drive his car instead of running it. But you know what Peyton Manning's going to do, and it's going to be a 6-yard pass here, an 8-yard pass there, and you still can't stop him. So I think there's a little more value in being a one-tool guy who can exploit that tool so much, you can pick apart virtually any defense.
Yeah, it's a pretty good point.
So I'm saying Manning top 5. All right, well, let's move on to second down now. A little more interesting topic, and kind of a fascinating legal topic, actually, and unfortunately it comes up every few years because somebody at a college makes a bad decision. And this year, that college is the University of Texas at El Paso. The Miners, formerly Texas Western of Glory Road movie fame. Tim Floyd, the head men's basketball coach there, recently came out and announced that they have dismissed 3 players from their team for gambling on college sports. Now, UTEP is adamant that gambling was not on UTEP games, but it appears it was on, whether it was men's basketball games or some other college sport, it was on something that absolutely crossed the line, and those players who are seniors, have been dismissed from the team. So, AJ, I've got to wonder, first off, maybe clear up the legal waters for me on this, because I understand that a college basketball player cannot bet on college basketball, but what's wrong with a college basketball player who's 19, 20, 21 going to Atlantic City to bet? I mean, does the NCAA, I know they dislike all gambling, but is it right for them to do that, or are they just legally protecting themselves from maybe ruining the integrity of college athletics?
Well, there's 2 tiers here. We have the NCAA that does its own regulations, and then we have federal and state laws. And in this case, you have the NCAA, enforcing their 1-year suspension against those 3 players. And, that's a flat-out suspension. And as they say, it is to preserve the integrity of college sports.
I'm not even...
And also, it's the ethical atmosphere for the players themselves. And so, there is that lower level regulation, but in this instance, you had the FBI who got involved. Because the problem is, when you're doing gambling and it's interstate, that's when you're going to have federal authorities. That's against the law. We have the Federal Wire Act that says you cannot have sports gambling going across state lines like that. You need it to be regulated, and since you have it in certain states, we know we have Atlantic City, we have Vegas, and in those confines, it'll work, but in this situation, although we don't know too much about the facts and what went on yet from the FBI's investigation, we do know that whatever they were doing, it was violating federal law.
So you say interstate gambling, which makes sense, I guess, because it becomes a federal issue when you cross state lines. So UNLV and the University of Nevada players, can they gamble on sports in their state? Or is that just a flat-out NCAA violation, so it can't happen anyways?
Well, I think the NCAA would probably have a problem with it. It definitely would not work for them at all, but in terms of the federal territory, it wouldn't invoke any federal laws.
So why is the NCAA so adamant about some of these gambling rules? And even when Johnny Manziel, like you've noted, has gone to Atlantic City to gamble on his 21st birthday, not illegal, but maybe the NCAA is not so happy about guys doing that. Why are they so adamant about it? Is there a legal liability that they're seeking to protect with this, or is it just that sort of broader idea of keeping integrity in college athletics, which is just a bullcrap statement? But I mean, is that really all they're trying to do with this?
I honestly think it's all about integrity, and I'm sure there's a little bit of concern in terms of having it spill over into the actual sports that they're playing, because gambling it's a vice, it can be addictive, and they don't want players falling into that trap.
Well, and last question, AJ, I've got to wonder, because we use Twitter and Facebook all the time for everything, and the internet, I mean, it's been around for 30 years. Everybody loves it and everybody uses it now. Where does the future go with gambling? Because internet gambling in general is very, very popular. What does the NCAA need to do, or do there need to be new rules or new laws to kind of police these players and how they navigate the internet and bookies and people looking for information, or should that be a concern for the NCAA?
I think, as society continues to change and we have these technological advancements and all the things we do, there are always going to be issues that come up. And the best way to do it is to combat that and to educate players about gambling and so that they don't fall into what could become a vice. It is an enjoyable thing. We have horse races, we have the lottery, and those are very heavily regulated. And so there are things like that that are suitable and okay. But when you have players who are very much involved in this competitive sport element, you do not want them gambling in sports in other realms.
Yeah. Pete Rose can attest to that, I would imagine. But that's, a different story. All right, let's move on to third down now. Speaking of a different story, and we've got a fun topic ahead. It's February. The Super Bowl happened. Football's over, but it's really not over because the football draft is coming up here in a couple months. So, AJ, we are going to go through every single pick, all 32. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to go over a couple of the first NFL draft picks, what you guys need to know, what you need to watch. Obviously, every sports show ever has an NFL draft show.
It does.
So, we're just another one of the hundreds of NFL draft shows you can watch, and hopefully we're funnier and sexier than most of the other ones. But let's begin with some players to watch in the first round. AJ, you are a Blake Bortles fan? Central Florida quarterback, he shot up the thing. What do you like about this guy?
You know, he's a big guy. We're looking at what? Is it about almost 6'5",
Yeah.
230? He is big, and he can carry and execute. And you're right, he did shoot up because I think we were all kind of focused on maybe a little Manziel fever. Definitely Teddy Bridgewater was getting a few nods, although I know you have your thoughts on that.
We'll talk about that.
But Bortles, I think he's going to be an excellent pick, and he should come probably in the first or second.
Oh, without a doubt. I think he's maybe a top 5 pick. The only question I have with Bortles, and we'll talk about this when we get to the teams, he would function better in an Aaron Rodgers situation, where Rodgers went to Green Bay, backed up Brett Favre for a few years. It became controversial because Favre didn't want to retire.
Yes.
But Rodgers learned the NFL before he had to play under the pressure of the NFL. And if Bortles gets drafted by the Texans or the Jaguars or the Browns right on top and is inserted as a starter on day one, it's going to be like Blaine Gabbert in Jacksonville now from the University of Missouri, who's not ready to do it. Gabbard's a pretty good quarterback who needed some seasoning, was thrown into a starting lineup and failed. And I'm worried that the same thing happens to Bortles if he goes to one of these teams. And it's going to happen to Bridgewater.
Yes. I know how you feel about that. I think with having a lot of rookie quarterbacks having done so well within the last few years, just coming off the bat, I think there's a lot of pressure on quarterbacks coming out. But having the homegrown kind of approach that Elway likes to take, I think it definitely could help Bortles.
That's good, and Denver would actually be a great fit for him. They don't need him. They've got Brock Osweiler, but there's a few other guys to watch in the first round. Before we run down the picks, I like Khalil Mack, defensive end from Buffalo, very, very fast. Is going to get converted to an outside linebacker. We both love Kelvin Benjamin from Florida State. He's like 7 feet tall. He's actually 6'5", but for a receiver, that's great height. And then Taylor Lewan, who we will talk about as an offensive tackle. AJ, it's not a sexy pick to pick an offensive tackle, but if you were a GM and you had your choice between a high-risk athlete and a low-risk offensive tackle who you could insert into a starting lineup and play for 15 years, do you take the low-risk or do you go with the high-risk player?
See, for me, it's all about what are my team's needs. We know the Texans, they need a quarterback, they need an offensive tackle, a safety, so they have some room to move around, and also kind of how many, picks do I have available to me? The Browns, they have a number available to them as well to fill their needs, so I'm looking to fill a slot. But, as we discussed before, there are some hot players out there like Jadeveon Clowney who you might not you don't want to let it pass you by. And so even though you don't have the need, it may be worthwhile to snatch him up on the first pick.
Well, and I like that you transition there with Jadeveon Clowney because I think this is one we're actually in agreement with. The Texans should, maybe, probably, hopefully, if we're going to predict this right, take Jadeveon Clowney on pick 1. Too much of a risk to take a quarterback, right?
Yeah, they have Matt Schaub, and it's a special experience, but still, it might be worthwhile to go ahead and snatch him up and just complimentary to J.J. Watt and just continue to execute well on that defensive line.
And speaking of snatching him up and being complimentary, the St. Louis Rams on pick 2, they need a fair amount, although they got the pick from the Redskins, and the Rams actually have been doing better lately. It's offensive tackle city for them. It's either Jake Matthews from Texas A&M or the aforementioned Taylor Lewan from Michigan. Not the sexiest pick, and if you're a Rams fan and you see them taking an offensive tackle on pick 2, you're going to sleep the rest of draft day, but it's a smart pick, right?
Oh, no, I think it's a very smart pick, and I think we need to jump into our draft. You ready?
Let's do it. And listen,
got it.
And not only that with the Rams about pick 2, Sam Bradford, they gave $1 billion to a quarterback. You need to protect him, so you want good offensive linemen. So I know it's not the sexiest pick for people in St. Louis, but trust me, if you get Taylor Lewan, if you get Jake Matthews as an offensive tackle, Sam Bradford will keep his head on straight, and nobody will come around the blind side and kill him next year. So, all right, so we went over the first 2 picks. We've got the Houston Texans looking at Clowney. We've got the Rams on offensive tackle. Let's talk about the Jaguars at pick number 3. I know this is where we start to differ on our picks. Who do you like Jacksonville to take with pick number 3?
I think Jacksonville's going to need to snatch up a quarterback. And I think it might end up being Johnny Manziel. Although he told the Texans that they'd be making the biggest mistake if they didn't pick him as quarterback. They really do need someone, and I think he might be higher up on the list, and Bortles will go before he does.
So you don't think that the Texans take Manziel because he's a Texas guy, and then the Jaguars take Bortles because he's a Florida guy? You're not a fan of the hometown team thing?
I don't think it'll fare well.
It's not like Tebow trying to go to Jacksonville. I disagree with you on that. I agree that Jacksonville needs a quarterback. And I think that if Bortles is available, they may end up taking him. My only concern with Jacksonville is if they take Bortles or Bridgewater or Manziel, they're going to insert that guy into as a starting quarterback right away, and he's not ready to play. And whoever it is going to struggle for a long time. And I'm just not sure what else you do but take a quarterback there.
Yes.
It's tough. All right, number 4 pick, the Cleveland Browns. Surprise, surprise, they also need a quarterback. AJ, who do you like them getting?
Gosh, I think, having Manziel out, I honestly, I would say Teddy Bridgewater.
Oh, Bridgewater.
I know. And the thing is, I know he has a smaller frame, and so he's probably not going to put on too much weight. And the question of whether he can truly execute at the NFL level, yeah. But I think, he should deserve his time to prove himself.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get a chance to prove himself, and he does deserve that. But I will say that Bridgewater was a Heisman hopeful, the Heisman frontrunner at the start of the year, playing for a Louisville team that was supposed to play for a national championship in a weak American Athletic Conference, and their offense was horrible, and the only reason they went as far as they did, their defense was phenomenal. Bridgewater couldn't play against American Athletic Conference defenses. Folks, I'm talking about Cincinnati, South Florida, Memphis, crappy teams. What makes you think Bridgewater is going to be an NFL quarterback? I say the Browns take the best athlete on the board. I look at Derek Carr from Fresno State as a quarterback, or Kelvin Benjamin. If you're going to take the best athlete on board, get Benjamin. You can always use a wide receiver or use somebody else's trade bait and go from there. I would love to see Bridgewater in the pros, though, because he's going to bust. And what about our number 5? Our last pick, we're going to do the Oakland Raiders. They perennially need something because they haven't been good in decades, it feels like. Who do the Oakland Raiders take this year?
I definitely think they should take whoever's left available, but also, get a good wide receiver. Maybe Sammy Watkins would be good.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins, a forgotten guy, at least for me in the draft, was higher earlier, but definitely a great athlete. I like for them a pass rusher, and I think if Clowney goes off the board, I think they look at Anthony Barr from UCLA, who is a monster, or the guy I mentioned before, Khalil Mack from Buffalo, a little undersized, but depending on the scheme, if you're in a 3-4, you can use him as kind of an outside linebacker or a defensive end. But it'll be interesting to see that NFL draft. Goes down in May, so something tells me we may end up talking about it again on the show.
Yeah, I think we might.
All right, now 4th down, we always try to do something a little more fun for 4th down because, as you can tell, we're not having any fun on the first 3. But this one actually is fun, and you mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to work this into a show. Baseball walk-up song. So for people who haven't been to a game or maybe haven't noticed, every player typically gets a walk-up song. When you walk up to bat or when you jog out on the mound to pitch your first inning, you get a song played over the PA that is your choice. And it's rock or rap or country or something that fires you up. So we decided on the show, and we want your involvement too at home, what would your baseball walk-up song be if you could pick one? So AJ, I have a few from my playing days, but before I reveal them to you, what would you pick? And would you be a pitcher or a hitter?
Oh, I would definitely be a hitter.
Okay.
Most certainly. And for walk-up songs, because I think they really do define who you are as a person, and you want to it should be iconic. And so I'm a classic rock girl. I am from Cowtown, and that's completely fine with me. So my walk-up song tops would be Big Gun, AC/DC. Gotta love it. And then we have Saturday Night Special, Leonard Skinner. And then, of course, I can't walk away from a little bit of beat. So I'm Tone Loc, Funky Cole Medina.
Well, I wasn't ready for any one of those 3 answers. All right, AJ, since you say walk-up songs have to be iconic, I'm nervous to tell you which walk-up songs I had when I was playing. In college, I used Better Than Ezras, Desperately Wanting, Don't You Dare Judge Me. And in the pros...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And in the pros, I used Van Halen's Right Now, which actually is a decent walk-up song with a whole piano. I'm not even going to defend myself to you. You know what? Screw you,
You know
man.
what? I stopped listening, but go ahead.
All right, so I think there's 2 good things that make a walk-up song, and I think you're right. It does have to be iconic. 2 things from me. First off, the best walk-up song I've ever heard, Larry Walker, Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. Just so badass. And only Larry Walker. There's only a few guys who could pull that off, and Larry Walker is one of them. But there's 2 things I think that make a good walk-up song. One of them is super fan-friendly.
Yes.
And the other one is tongue-in-cheek funny, because it is just a song and it's kind of dumb. So super fan-friendly, here's one. Colorado Rockies former outfielder Ryan Spilborghs played outfield for them for about 10 years. He used Gwen Stefani's Sweet Escape as his walk-up song to bat. And I'm not going to sing it, but it's like the wee-oo. I can't believe I did that on camera. But it's like a fan-friendly refrain. And after a couple weeks of using this, everyone in the stadium was singing the song when it came up. So it becomes defined by him. It's a fun thing. It's a great crowd participation. The other one, the tongue-in-cheek, Troy Tulowitzki, the Rockies all-star shortstop, used 2 years ago when he was coming to bat, Miley Cyrus's Party in the USA. A great song, and definitely hard rock like Leonard Skinner. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Real rough stuff.
Real rough stuff. But he used that song, and when called on it, he said, you know what, kids come. It's a fun thing. Like, come on, little kids are here. Who cares? I think those are my 2 good choices, but iconic, huh?
Yes. Something memorable. Something that says, yeah, no, she is incredible.
I mean, we can't all be Mariano Rivera coming out to enter Sandman.
No, I don't think we can.
Well, you know, as a hitter, too, you're only going to get like 15 seconds to do your walk-up song. So you got to pick a good 15 seconds.
Yeah, and I got a two-step to the base, because that's what I like to do.
Yeah, you never get hit when you came to bat or anything. Pitchers wouldn't think you were showing them up at all if you two-stepped the way into the plate. I would love to see that.
I would, too.
All right, well, guys, tell us what your walk-up song would be if you were a baseball player, or if you used to play, tell us what your walk-up song was, because we would love to hear, and what you think makes a good walk-up song. That's it this week on 4 Down Territory. For my co-host, AJ Lawrence, and her iconic music selection, I'm Bobby DeMuro. We will see you guys in another 2 weeks with another episode debating 4 hot topics in sports.